Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Charlene and today I'm going to be tier ranking all of the classic novels and novellas I have read. So while I haven't read near as many classics as some people, I thought it would be fun to go through and do a tier ranking on books that I've read in some of my more common genres. I don't know if I'm going to be doing one of these every month, but I am going to be doing them throughout the year. Mostly I'm going to start off focusing on novels and novellas, but I may do a tier ranking of plays that I've read or short story collections or something like that, just depending on if I have enough to actually do them and if you guys would be interested in seeing them. But today we're going to go through and look at all of the classics that I've read that are either novels or novellas. So this is going to exclude any epic poetry, poetry collections, short story collections, etc. These are just books written in prose that are, we'll say, longer than 100 pages. Because short stories can vary, but for the most part, once you hit the 100-page mark, they're not a short story anymore. Actually, probably for the most part, once you hit 50 pages, they're not a short story anymore. But you know what I mean. I have everything set up, so I will go ahead and shrink myself down and pop up the tier ranking up on the screen. I don't know exactly what order it has put all of these in. We're just going to go through them as they show up. But first, I'll go over all of the rankings that I have. So the first one is Absolutely Loved It. So pretty much this is mostly going to be my all-time favorites. The next one has really made an impact. There are some classics that I've really enjoyed that have made an impact on me, but I wouldn't rank the book 5 stars. So this is probably where a lot of those are going to go. Next is Really Liked It or It Was Cute. There are some that are more children's classics on here. So I wanted to have a place where those can go because I did really enjoy them, but they weren't necessarily ones that would normally get a higher rank, but I think they still deserve to. And then also for the books that I just really liked in general. The next one, It Was Good or Okay. So these are ones that, for the most part, I liked them more than I didn't like them, but they didn't leave a lasting impression or they weren't ones that really stood out to me. The next one is Didn't Really Care for It. And this is basically, I disliked it more than I liked it. It's not one I would reread. It's not necessarily one I would recommend. And not saying I wouldn't recommend reading it, but I wouldn't offer it as a recommendation. And the next one is Didn't Like at all. There's nothing about this book that I liked, for the most part. Didn't enjoy reading it, something like that. And the last one is Did I read that one? Which basically means I remember nothing about this book. So according to Goodreads, I read it, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. So let's go ahead and start tier ranking them. So the first one here is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. And that one I would probably put in the It Was Good / okay. It's one that I liked some of the things in it, but I don't know. It's a very strange book. There's some things I've heard about it since I read it that make me want to reread it. But at the time that I read it, I would just go with It Was Okay. And yes, I do have an Alice in Wonderland mug with me today. I thought it was fitting for this. I didn't expect Alice in Wonderland to be the first book on the list when I chose this mug, but it works. Next one is 1984, and that one I'm going with Really Made an Impact. I don't know for sure if I could call it an all-time favorite, say I absolutely loved it. I did not like the ending. If you've read the book, you understand why. You're not supposed to like the ending, but it is a book that made an impact on me when I read it. Next we have Animal Farm, and I'm going to put it in the same tier. I really enjoyed it when I read it. It made an impact. It's made an impact since then in a lot of conversations I've had with people about it. It is one I want to reread because I read it in high school and I know there's a lot I don't remember. Next we have Anna Karenina. This one, I'm going to put Really Liked It. There were parts of the story that I really liked. I want to say the character's name is Lennon, but I'm not sure that's actually correct. But the one who works in the country, his point of view I really liked. There were other parts of it that I enjoyed, but I didn't love them. And I will be honest, there were parts of the book where I was like, this feels like we're using way too many words to tell this story. It's good. It's one that I really enjoyed, but it's not an all-time favorite. Anne of Green Gables, I'm going to put in the same one. I liked the story as Anne got older, which is why I need to continue the series, because I think I would enjoy it more once we get to the point where Anne is an adult. But I did really like the story itself. Sometimes Anne's antics, if you will, weren't necessarily the most fun for me to read. But I did enjoy the story as a whole, and like I said, I enjoyed Anne more as she got older. Around the World in 80 Days, I'm going to say didn't really care for it. Unfortunately, I found a good portion of this book to be kind of boring. Which is probably sad to say, but I did. Then we have The Awakening, and I'm going to put it in the same one. This is just another one of those, what I call very feminist books, where it's a woman feels the need to find herself, to rediscover herself, to do things that feel more like they are her. And that always involves going against or doing things that basically get her away, take her away from her husband. If I remember correctly, there is not a divorce in this book, but it's, I need to find something that's just me. And it means doing things that may potentially go against her marriage, that very much do not involve her husband in her life. And I'm just not the biggest fan of those books. So, although I say that, and you're going to see a book that comes up here that would contradict that. But I think also just the way it was written, I just didn't really care for it. It felt like a very feminist book, and that's not really my thing. Especially when it's, to find myself, I have to either figuratively or literally leave my marriage. I'm not the biggest fan of those. Next we have The Bread Givers, and I'm going to put that one in Really Made an Impact. This one I read in college, and it's one that I do still think about periodically. I know Tiffany from Beautiful Minutia compared it to another book, and I can't remember which one. It's a book I haven't read, so it makes me curious to try that book. But this one I really enjoyed when I was in college. So, and like I said, I do think about it quite often. All right, then we have Candide. And I'm putting it in the same category. And I know it's probably going to seem weird to some people, because I know a lot of people have read this book and not cared for it. It is very much a satire. It is very brutal, but it's one of those things with satire, people tend to go to the extremes to make their point. And Voltaire very much does that with this book. And no, I don't like some of the things that come up, but I appreciate the message that he was making, or the commentary he was making. It's another one I read in college, and when I read it, I absolutely loved the story. I love the way he made his point. I don't know. I don't feel like I can explain it because I understand it's a very brutal book, but it's one that definitely made an impact. Right, next we have A Christmas Carol, and that one I'll put under Really Liked. Also, you're going to notice I'm not necessarily going to move the books around within the tiers. I know some people do that, so the books are in kind of an exact order. I'm just fitting them in their tiers. I'm not trying to figure out within the tiers where do they fit. That takes too much brain power. I've only read A Christmas Carol once, and I did really enjoy it. But at the same time, I do know the story pretty well because of the different movie adaptations, so I'm not sure I can say it was a favorite, but I did really enjoy it. Next we have Frankenstein. Ooh. I think that one also needs to go under Really Made an Impact. Frankenstein is one of my absolute favorite classics, which is why I debate. You know what? We're going to put it in Absolutely Loved It. I loved the writing in this book. I loved the story itself. Again, the message she was trying to convey. This one, I picked it up not sure if I was going to enjoy it or not, and just ended up absolutely loving it. Next we have Great Gatsby. And I'm going to put it under It Was Okay. At the time that I read it, I was struggling to figure out what all the hype was about this book. It's considered one of the big American classics, but I didn't get it. I feel like there are parts of the story I've come to appreciate since reading the book, but I'm still just going to go with It Was Okay. Next we have the Canterbury Tales, and I wasn't sure whether I should include this or not, because it feels like a collection of short stories, but it's technically a bunch of stories within a story. So I did go ahead and include it, but I will also note, if you haven't read this, it is incomplete. He died before he finished the book. This one I'm going to say didn't really care for it. There were some stories I enjoyed in it, but as you get further into it, there's less to the stories. It is incomplete. It gets kind of choppy because I think he was working on a few of the different stories towards the end of his life and just didn't quite get them finished. So the first part starts really strong, but as you get towards the end, it starts getting weaker and weaker. So I'm just going to go with didn't really care for it. There were a few I liked, but not enough. Next we have The Island of Dr. Moreau. And I think I'm going to put this under really liked it. I really liked what he was exploring with the story, but unfortunately I don't think H.G. Wells' writing style is necessarily for me, or maybe his books just aren't for me. This is the second one of his that I've read, and while I like the message, while I like what he was exploring, I didn't love it. Next we have The Picture of Dorian Gray. That goes under absolutely loved it. This is a book that while I was reading it, I realized there are a lot of philosophical type conversations, and in the middle of one of them realized normally when I read books that have this kind of thing in it, or if I had known that was what was going to be in here a lot, I would have thought this is a book I'm not going to like, but I was completely enthralled from beginning to end. And this is one that I knew exactly how it was going to end when I picked it up, because I read an abridged version of it as a kid. I knew the ending of the story. And still I was enthralled throughout, which almost never happens. All right, next we have Lost Illusions. Oh, this is a hard one. I'm going to put this under really made an impact, because this one, it's divided into 3 parts. The first and third parts are about a quarter of the book, and the second part is about half the book. So kind of divides it up into the normal 3-act structure of a novel. Part 2, I absolutely loved. If the whole book had been written like part 2, it would have gone in absolutely loved it. However, parts 1 and 3 were a bit slower. I didn't care for them as much. And at the time that I read it, I didn't like the ending. But as I've had time to think about it and reflect on it, I've actually come to appreciate the story as a whole, even if I didn't enjoy reading all of it necessarily. And I've come to appreciate the ending as well. So I will say it really made an impact, even if I didn't always enjoy my time reading it. Next we have Dracula, and this is where I'm going to make some people mad. It was okay. I thought with this one being epistolary and being a bunch of journals, and I'm going to put the cup down because my fingers are starting to cramp. I really thought this is one that I was going to love. But unfortunately, there were parts of the story I found interesting, but a lot of it honestly just felt boring to me. And I don't know how or why, because like I said, I know a lot of people have loved this book, but unfortunately for me, most of it was boring. So I'm sorry. Next one is Main Street, and I'm going to go with didn't really care for it. This one gets very repetitive. It's a woman who lived in the city who moves to a small town, and she goes through this cycle of these people are not as cultured or educated as I think they should be, so I'm going to do something to fix it. She tries to educate them. It doesn't take off. She gives up. She gets frustrated with them. She tries to change them. It doesn't work. She gives up, so on and so forth. I'm pretty sure that repetition is there on purpose. It's, part of the story of like, she can't just find contentment in the life that she has. She has to keep trying to change things and make things more than they are. But unfortunately, that repetition got very old to read. So I didn't end up caring for the story that much. Next one is Moll Flanders, and I'm just going to say didn't like it all. I had to read this one in college. First of all, there are no chapters in this book. It's 400 pages long. There are no chapters. I don't even think there are page breaks in this book. And I struggled to get through this one. I was looking forward to it because it was by Daniel Defoe. And we'll get to Robinson Crusoe in a minute because it's on the list. And because of how I felt about that book, I thought I'll probably enjoy Moll Flanders. I found this book very boring, struggled to get through it. Honestly, I could almost put it under did I read that one because I remember nothing about it. So actually, we'll just put it down there. I didn't care for it, and apparently I retained nothing. All right, next is Flatland. As far as the story, I want to say it was okay, but I also want to say it made an impact because there are a lot of philosophical ideas explored in this book. And I did find it really interesting in that regard, but it was kind of boring to read. So I'll leave it under it really made an impact, but it's not the most interesting read. Fahrenheit 451, I think I'm going to put that one under really liked it. It is a really good book. It is one that I need to reread because I feel like there's a lot I don't remember about it anymore, but I do remember really enjoying it when I read it. Scarlet Letter, I almost feel like I need something in between either absolutely loved it and really made an impact or impact and really liked it. I'll put it under really liked it. I can't say it necessarily made an impact, but it is a story I really enjoyed. It is also one that I need to reread. Then we have Go Tell It on the Mountain. And I'm just going to go with didn't like it at all. I don't know of anything in particular I actually liked about this book. This is another one I had to read in college, and I read it to read it because it was assigned for the class, but was not one that I really cared for. Then we have The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm going to put that under really liked it. I enjoyed the story, but discovering that the plot twist in this book is common knowledge because of pop culture was kind of disappointing. Like, it's just a little bit too bad that we have spoiled that through pop culture. But I did really enjoy the story. Next we have Tess of the D'Urbervilles. And I'm going to put that under absolutely loved it. Now, I am not the biggest fan of Thomas Hardy's writing style because his sentences go on and on and on and on. But Tess of the D'Urbervilles, the story itself, I absolutely loved. Next we have Heidi, and that one I'm going to put under it was cute. This is part of the reason I added the it was cute to this one. I really enjoyed the story of Heidi. It's a really good story for kids, but yes, there is a part of it where Heidi almost feels like she's too good of a character, but I did really enjoy reading the book. Right, next we have Howard's End, and I'm going to say didn't really care for it. I will also add the caveat that I went into this with wrong expectations. Reading the summary on the back of the book, or the synopsis on the back, I thought this story was going to go one direction, and it went a different direction. And I wasn't overly a fan of the direction it actually went in. So that probably affected my enjoyment to an extent, because if I'd known what I was getting into, at least my enjoyment wouldn't have been affected by having wrong expectations. I still don't know if I would have loved it, but I think I may have liked it a little bit more. But unfortunately, in the end, I just found myself to be very disappointed by this one. Next, we have The Three Musketeers. That goes in absolutely loved it. This is one of the few times I will actually move it up. That is one of my all-time favorite classics. So this book is just a lot of fun. I love the banter between the friends. I'm one who actually likes political intrigue in my book, so I liked all the politics. Just absolutely love this book. Next is Jane Eyre. And this one is a mixed bag. I'm going to put it under it was okay. I liked really the middle portion of the book where she's working for Mr. Rochester. The part where she was at school I didn't care for, but this again is another one I want to reread because now knowing about Charlotte Bronte's life and the school she went to, I could see why that ended up in the book. Then the last part of the book where she's with these two women and their brother, I liked it initially, then something with the brother changed towards Jane, and then I didn't care for it after that. So this one's kind of a mixed bag. I feel like I need to reread it now knowing the whole story to see how I feel about it, but for now I'm going to say it was good or okay. War of the Worlds, I'm going to put in the same category. It was okay. This one took about a third to half the book before it finally felt like it took off and I was really enjoying it. But the first part of the book, I was bored. I wasn't even sure I was going to finish it. So we'll just put it in, it was good. Then we have Le Morte d'Arthur. Again, I'm going to have a lot of people upset with me about this one, but I did not like Le Morte d'Arthur at all. I like things with Arthurian legend. This one, I was bored out of my mind reading it. I don't know why, but I guess the way it was written just did not work for me at all, and I was very bored while I was reading it. All right, next we have Little Men. And I think I'm going to go with it was okay. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's because the boys are younger than the girls are in Little Women that I didn't care for this one, but I just thought it was okay. It didn't stand out to me. It wasn't a favorite by any means. I didn't hate it. There was just not enough in it to really make me love it. Next we have A Little Princess, and that one's going to go up by Heidi. Again, really like the story, but it's good as a children's book, but it's also a case of the main character is almost too perfect. So I could put it under it was cute, but it's not an all-time favorite. What is this one? I knew there were some of these I was going to struggle with. Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy. I think we'll just put it under it was good. I liked the story. I enjoyed my time reading it, but it wasn't one that left a lasting impression. Then we have East of Eden. That one's going to go all the way to the top. I just read this one last year, but I was enthralled with this book from beginning to end. Despite all of the different things that happen in it, I still really enjoyed it. All right, Phantom of the Opera is also going under the it was good or okay. I have heard so many people talk about loving this book that I feel like I must have missed something. So that's one of the reasons why I'm wanting to reread it in February. I've been meaning to do it for a few years now and still haven't gotten to it. But I know I like the musical, and I feel like I should like the book. So I'm hoping my opinion of this changes, but as of right now, unfortunately, I have to just go with it was good. Then we have the Screwtape Letters. I will go with that really made an impact. This is a book between like a head demon and apprentice demon, as they're talking back and forth about this man that there's Screwtape and there's Wormwood, and I don't remember which one's the master and which one's the apprentice, or the head and the apprentice. But they're writing letters back and forth as the apprentice is doing different things to draw a Christian man astray, to draw him away from God. And realizing the different things, even the small things in our lives, that the devil can use to just draw us away from God. And like, well, if you're not spending time with God, then that's a positive. Yeah, that part really made an impact. So, all right, then we have The Sound and the Fury. This is probably going to seem strange to a lot of people, but I really liked this book. I don't know for sure that I consider it an absolute favorite, but this is another one I read in college. And I think most of the people in my class did not care for this book. It's the exact same story told from 3 different perspectives. But I don't know. I don't know what it was. I loved this book when I read it. So yeah, I'm going to put it there. Actually, I could probably almost put it at the top, but we're going to put it there because I don't think it ranks quite that high. Actually, I could just put it on It Made an Impact because I really like the way he told the story. All right, then we have The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. And that one I'm going to put with It Was Good. I enjoyed parts of the story, but there were other parts that either I didn't necessarily agree with or didn't necessarily find as interesting. So I'm just going to put it with It Was Good. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. I really enjoyed that one. I thought that book was a lot of fun. Then we have A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And that one I'm putting under Absolutely Loved It. Now, I will be honest, there are parts of the story that I kind of draw a blank on. Because I partially read the book and partially listened to it on audio. And didn't realize at the time that I struggle to retain things when I'm listening to an audiobook. Or more so than anything, I struggle to pay attention when listening to an audiobook. So there are parts of the story I don't remember, and I do want to reread it, but I do remember loving it when I read it. All right, next we have 20 Years After, which is the sequel to The Three Musketeers. Trying to think of where to put this one. You know what, I'm just going to put it at the top. There is about a quarter of the book where I was kind of like, can we get to the main part of the story? Can we move on from here? But the rest of the book I really enjoyed. So we're still going to put it up at the top. Then we have Utopia. That can also go down with, I didn't like it at all. It's very philosophical, and the world that he describes, even if you just take the things that make society run well, it's like, it's a great idea, except for the fact that you're dealing with human beings. And we're all individuals. We all have different things that we want to do, enjoy doing. And you're never going to get every human being to agree on this one way to do things. So in some ways, nice idea, but never going to work. And in other ways, just don't even like his ideas. All right, then we have Tristan by Gottfried von Strasberg. This is another one I read for college, and Tristan was one of King Arthur's knights. And this one I also really enjoyed. This is another one I almost feel like I need to reread, because I know there's a lot I don't remember anymore. But there's a lot going on in this story, and I remember just really enjoying it at the time. Then we have Wuthering Heights, and we're just going to pop that into absolutely loved it. I, again, just read this one last year, and I couldn't put it down. Like, I wanted to know what was going to happen, how everything was going to work out. Yes, the characters are very frustrating, but for me, if the characters are meant to be unlikable, it doesn't bother me that they're unlikable. It's only if I'm supposed to like the character and I don't that I have a problem. The characters in this are not supposed to be likable, and they're very frustrating watching what the people had to go through, but I ended up really enjoying the book. All right, then we have Huckleberry Finn. And I'm sorry, guys. I did not care for this one. I struggled to get through it. I probably should have DNF'd it, to be honest, because I've liked some of Mark Twain's other books, but this one was very boring to read for some reason. I mean, so many times I would have the book open in front of me and would be fighting not to fall asleep while reading it. So I ended up having to listen to part of it on audiobook just to get through it. And again, this was still at a time where I was struggling to figure out how to pay attention to an audiobook while listening to it. All right, if you happen to notice that my outfit changed, it's because the camera cut me off while I was recording and I didn't realize it until I was done. So now I'm back to finish up this video, and I'm pretty sure I got the tier ranking looking the way it did where it cut me off, but if something is off there, then that's why. So I just got done talking about Huckleberry Finn. So the next book on the list is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And that one is going all the way to the top. Hunchback is one that I consider to be my personal all-time favorite classic. I'm not even sure I can tell you what it is about this story that made me love it so much, but I did. I just absolutely fell in love with the story. I fell in love with the characters. No, you don't like a lot of the characters, but I just ended up really enjoying this one. First of all, it is very different from the Disney version. If you grew up with the Disney movie like I did, just know that this book is nothing like it. About the only thing that's the same between the book and the movie is the names of the characters. Other than that, entirely different story. And I knew there were going to be differences, I just didn't realize how different they were going to be. But I was able to enjoy this story so much because it was so different from the movie that there wasn't even any comparing the two. I do need to reread it at some point. Part of me is nervous that it won't hold up, but another part of me is like, I don't see how it couldn't hold up. So maybe one of these days I'll actually reread it. But for now, I consider it my favorite classic of all time. All right, next we have The Catcher in the Rye. And that one I'm going to put under, it was okay. This book seems to be very polarizing. People love it, people hate it. I fell into the camp of, there were a lot of things about the character of Holden that I didn't care for. but there were aspects of the story that I did enjoy. There were other aspects that I didn't enjoy or just thought were okay, so I'm just going to pop it in the middle. Then we have The Nutcracker. This is the version by Alexandre Dumas, and I'm going to put that one under really liked it. It is a really good story. There is a lot more to it than I realized. From what I understand, this is kind of him taking the E.T.A. Hoffmann version and writing it as though somebody else were telling the story to their kids, I think. I don't know. It's been a while since I've read it. I may have that wrong. So I know there's a chance that there's some things that he changed in the story. I haven't read the E.T.A. Hoffmann version to know what those might be, but I did enjoy this one. I thought it was a lot of fun to read and a lot more to it than I expected. All right, then we have The Prince and the Pauper by Mark Twain. And this one, I'm going to put under it was okay. I liked parts of the story. I did find it interesting because, I mean, like most of us, I grew up hearing the story of The Prince and the Pauper. I didn't realize that the original story was supposed to be Edward the Sixth? Edward the Fourth. I am blanking all of a sudden. Henry VIII's son, whichever Edward he was. I don't know why I'm blanking all of a sudden. I think it's Edward the Fourth, now that I'm saying that. But it's his son who trades places with a pauper child. I didn't realize that that was the case in the original story, so that was interesting to find out. But while there were interesting aspects to the story, I found the story itself to read kind of boring. It was very dry. I didn't enjoy it as much as I had a couple of his other books, namely Tom Sawyer and a book we haven't gotten to yet. There were aspects that were interesting, but it was just an okay read. Then we have Les Mis, also by Victor Hugo, and we'll just put that one up there. I started out listening to the musical of this, watching the concert, the 10th anniversary concert edition of this when I was in high school. Absolutely fell in love with the story. And finally picked up the book to read it. And while the musical did a really good job, because this is a long story and you can't get all of that into a 2-hour musical, I felt like the musical did a fantastic job of capturing the main parts of the story and telling the story really well for the time constraint and everything that they were under. There is a whole lot more to the story than what you get in the musical, which is part of the reason why I love the book so much. But the musical is still really well done, in my opinion. All right, next we have Little Women. And this is the 5th of what I typically consider my top 5 classics. This was a book that, honestly, because it's fairly slice of life, seemed like the type of book that I would find kind of boring to read because it's slower paced and everything. But I ended up really loving it. And was very pleasantly surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did. So I consider it one of my top 5 favorite classics. All right, then we have Jo's Boys. We already have Little Men on the list, and where is it at? Okay, so I'm going to put Jo's Boys in the same ranking as Little Men. It was okay. I liked Jo's Boys a little bit better than Little Men. So I guess if we want to get technical, I know I said I wasn't really organizing these, but a few of them I will. I did enjoy Jo's Boys a little bit more than Little Men. Probably because the boys are a little bit older, which is why I think I enjoyed Little Women so much, because the girls start around 12, 15 years old and we go until they're in their late teens, early 20s. And so that's more of the time of life that I enjoy reading about, is like the teens into 20s or even older. Not so much younger kids, and that's what we had in Little Men. So with the boys being a little bit older in Jo's Boys, I liked that one more. But in the end, still just thought it was okay. All right, then we have Pride and Prejudice. And this one I'm going to have a hard time with. I'm going to put it under really liked it. The thing is, I thought the story was really good. I struggled at times to read it. I think it's something with Jane Austen's writing style. It just didn't click for me when I read this book. And I know I enjoyed the story overall. And when I watched a movie adaptation, absolutely fell in love with it. So as far as the story goes, I really enjoyed it. As far as the writing goes, it was okay, so we're just going to put it under really liked it because the story is really good. All right, then we have Moby Dick, and that one is going up under really made an impact. This is one that I struggled to get into. Actually, I liked the very beginning, but once they got on the ship, I struggled to get into it. But eventually, something clicked with this, and I was really enjoying the book. I think part of it is because I was tandem reading it. His sentences are very long and meandering, and it's sometimes hard to figure out exactly what he's trying to say. So listening to the audiobook helped with that, while actually reading the book helped keep me more engaged with the book because I do like physical reading more than audiobooks. But this is a book that has just really stuck with me, especially the ending. So it's definitely going under really made an impact. All right, the next one is A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. This is also by Mark Twain, the one that hadn't made the list. And it is definitely one of my favorite classics. This is the first novel by Mark Twain I ever read. And I had done some reading on Arthurian legend for one of my college classes. And I think I saw this one at Barnes & Noble and thought, you know what, I'll pick it up. I know more about Arthurian legend. This will be fun to read. And I absolutely loved it. The way that he was able to weave together the story of King Arthur, what we have from the different legends, along with what at his time was a more modern mindset and how they would have viewed things if someone from his time had gone back to the time of King Arthur, was just so much fun, so well done. Really love this book. All right, next one is Robinson Crusoe, and that one is also going to go up on absolutely loved it. This is, from what I've understood, is typically considered the first English novel, or first novel published in English. I think most people know what it's about. It's a guy who goes to sea. He gets shipwrecked on an island for years, and I just love this. It was just really interesting seeing how he learned to adapt and survive on the island. There's also elements of his faith woven into the story that I really enjoyed as well. And yeah, I ended up just absolutely loving this story. All right, next one is How Do You Live? And I'm going to put this one under really like it. I'm sorry, I don't remember the author's name. It's a Japanese name and one I'm not familiar with. But this is a Japanese classic from the 1930s. And it's a blend of slice of life and kind of educational philosophical discussions. We have the main character's uncle who is talking about different things when it comes to history or science, but with more of a philosophical purpose. And then we have the main character we're following where we're kind of seeing his life during one of his years in school. And he's in middle school, so it's very much a coming of age story. And I really enjoyed this book, more than I probably expected to, but I enjoyed all the aspects of it. Most people seem to like the main character's story more and not so much care about what the uncle was talking about, but I actually enjoyed both parts of it. All right, next we have Through the Looking Glass, and I'm going to put this under the, where do I put this one? I'm actually going to put this one under, did I read that one? I remember quite a few aspects of Alice in Wonderland. Through the Looking Glass, I feel like I only remember a couple things from the very beginning of the book and nothing else. I know Tweedledee and Tweedledum are in this book because I remember hearing that they're not in Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, but they were in the Alice in Wonderland Disney movie. But I don't even remember them showing up in the book. So apparently this is one I need to go back and reread because I remember almost nothing. All right, then we have The Once and Future King by T.H. White. I don't know why I blanked on that name. And this is technically a bind-up of 4 books in the series. So we have The Sword and the Stone, The Queen of Air and Darkness, The Ill-Fated Knight, I think is what the third one's called, and A Candle in the Wind. So this follows Arthur from when he's a young boy in Sword in the Stone, which is what the Disney movie was based on, all the way to the end of his life in A Candle in the Wind. And 3 of the 4 are ones that I had to read for college. The Ill-Fated Night is the only one I didn't have to read. And I kind of understand after reading it why our professor didn't assign us to read that one, because of the 4 books, it was definitely my least favorite. But I think I'm going to put it under really liked it, simply because of the 3rd one. I didn't care for the 3rd one. The 3rd one would go under didn't really care for it. The other 3 would go under absolutely loved it. So we're going to kind of meet in the middle a little, and we're going to put it under really liked it. The other 3 stories I absolutely loved. I know there's a lot of people that also don't care for the second one, but I really enjoyed it because the second one is more about Arthur's mother and half-sisters. So more so than it is about Arthur himself. And so that might be why a lot of people don't care for it, but I really enjoyed it. All right, the next one we have is Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. And which book was it? This is what happens when it's been so long. Oh, since I filmed. So this is where I come back to The Awakening, where I said I don't like all of these more feminist type books where it's in order for a woman to find herself, she has to either leave her husband or basically have a life completely apart from her husband. And I said there was a book on here that kind of feels like it goes against what I said there, and that is Madame Bovary. But no, over here. Sorry. Trying to remember the order of my top 5 all of a sudden. Madame Bovary I put as my number 4 favorite classic of all time. And for a lot of people, it probably doesn't make sense. No, I don't agree with what Madame Bovary does. This book follows a man named Charles Bovary who is married, but then I believe his first wife dies. And so he gets remarried, and then from there we're following the viewpoint of his second wife, who is the titular Madame Bovary. And for the most part, she seems to have had some idea of either what married life was going to be or what life specifically with Charles was going to be like. And what she's seen in the marriage, what her life is like, doesn't seem to quite align with that. At least from what I remember, that's kind of her motivation. So she starts looking for what she was expecting elsewhere. And so she is a woman who has an affair. But the way that it's discussed in the book, the way the book ends, I like the way that it was covered. And honestly, this was just a book that the writing just drew me in and did not let go. I honestly picked this book up just thinking, I'll give it a try. And at least that way I've tried it. And when I don't enjoy it, I can just get rid of it and not feel bad about it. And then I ended up loving it. So yeah, this one was a complete surprise. Again, I don't agree with her decisions, but at least at the time that I read it, I liked the way that it was, the way that everything ultimately ended up playing out, and the way that some of the things in her life were discussed. So it goes up on the top of the list, even though it seems to go against what I said with The Awakening, to an extent. But this is also written by a male author, not a female author, so it's not, I don't feel like it's him trying to push feminist ideas so much as showing what maybe some of the things that people were doing in the time that he was living looked like and his opinion on them. All right, then we have The Secret Garden, and I'm going to put that one under really liked it also. I'm not putting it up there for it was cute. This one I really enjoyed. A Little Princess is more of it was cute. I liked the story. The character is almost a little too perfect though. And in The Secret Garden, she is not perfect at all. She's actually very much a brat at the beginning of the book. But I really loved where the story went. I loved her character growth. Really the growth of a lot of different characters, but especially the main character. So putting that one under really liked it. Then for the last two, we have Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. And that one I'm also putting under really liked it. This is one that I need to reread because I remember really enjoying it at the time. And there were certain aspects of the story that I enjoyed in particular. but a lot of the details I don't remember anymore. So I know it's one I really enjoyed. I just need to go back and reread it so I can remember the parts that I no longer remember for some reason. All right, then last we have Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis. And this one I'm going to put under it was good, it was okay. This one is about a man who wakes up one morning and mysteriously he has been turned into a giant bug. And it just goes through as he's trying to figure out what happened, what's going on, as he tries to do different things and realizes he can't do things, no opposable thumbs, no hands. A lot of things not the way they used to be as different people come in contact with him and their response to seeing this giant bug. This is one that I had to read for college as well, and I enjoyed the story when I had to read it. As far as any commentary that may have come from the book, I don't remember any of that anymore, so I can't comment on that aspect. But the story itself, I feel like it was good. It was good enough. I could get through it, no problem, but it wasn't one that overly stuck with me, other than maybe as pop culture references, because I do see a lot of references online to, and maybe pop culture is not the right term, but literary references, because I see a lot of those online, and so I at least appreciate that I understand the references, but the story itself was good, but not one that I overly loved. Alright, so that is my tier ranking of all of the classics that I have read so far. If you read any of the books that I talked about today, let me know what you thought about them down in the comments below, especially if there were any that stood out as you really loved them or you really disliked them. Those always feel like the most fun to talk about versus the ones that are like, I read it, it was okay. Also, if there are any classics that you would recommend that I didn't list based on my preferences that you kind of got from this, feel free to do that as well. There are a lot of classics that I still need to get to. I have plenty on my shelves. Plus, there are plenty others I don't own that I do want to get to. So feel free to leave any recommendations, because I know there's a lot of classics that I'm not familiar with and may not think to pick up. So recommendations are always welcome. Other than that, I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you later.